All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of GC live here at BP Skinner in the Vista. Like we've been telling you every single Thursday, come on by, check out everything they have going on here, whether it's for your game day fit or weddings, big events, whatever it may be. Come by, see us here at 1003 Gervais Street here in the Vista. Again, breaking down South Carolina versus Oklahoma. Got a great show lined up for you here again today. I'll be joined later on. We're going to keep mixing it up on Thursdays. Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central going to join us, and then George Stoya from Soonerscoop.com on 3 Oklahoma Network. He's going to join us and talk to us a little bit about the Oklahoma perspective of what has become, honestly, a really big game for both teams. Oklahoma sitting here at 4-2, South Carolina at 3-3. I don't have to tell the Gamecock fans listening how important this game has sort of shaped up to be for South Carolina. And similar situation at Oklahoma. They're sitting there at 4-2, but they really have not played quite as difficult of a schedule yet as South Carolina has. And if you've been maybe reading some of the Oklahoma message boards or checking out what they're saying on Twitter, lots of upset Oklahoma fans out there right now about the way this thing has gone so far for them this season, particularly on the offensive side where they've struggled on the offensive line. They've struggled to find a quarterback and have just been decimated by injuries there at wide receiver. So, again, welcome in, everybody. If you are in the chat, apologize for being on a little bit late. I see some of you already in there. Hit us with your questions. Hit us with your comments and your thoughts on South Carolina versus Oklahoma. This show, as always, is presented by our guy, Clint Hammond, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. Like I said, we got Jack Veltri joining us a little bit later on, and we're going to break down essentially our final thoughts and give some predictions on the game. But first, let's go ahead. Let's go out. Let's bring in George Stoya. This is a pre-recorded interview from a little bit earlier today on 107.5. But George does a fantastic job covering Oklahoma and letting you know a little bit about kind of the perspective of where things are with them right now. Let's go out to George and check it out for about 10, 12-minute interview right here. Then we'll have Jack on.
Kind of at a crucial point in their season. South Carolina trying to get over the 500 mark, and obviously Oklahoma with a tough schedule ahead trying to get themselves closer to, at the very least, bowl eligibility as well. I wanted to start off with the biggest story surrounding this team, that being the quarterback room. Of course, Jackson Arnold was thought to be the guy. They made the switch at the Tennessee game, and Michael Hawkins Jr. has been the quarterback in the week since, though his numbers aren't really all that much different than what Jackson Arnold had been doing prior to that. What is the latest on not only where this quarterback room sits right now, but what the future projections of the spot for this Oklahoma Sooners team is going to be?
Yeah, this is a really big weekend for that position because, like you said, they made the switch 4 games into the season. Jackson Arnold was turning the ball over too much. The offense was stagnant. You know, whether that was his fault or not is kind of, I think, up for debate. I think that this Oklahoma offense has a lot of issues other than just the quarterback position. And Michael Hawkins has come in and done an okay job. They win the game at Auburn, and he played, for a true freshman in that environment pretty well. Had a couple big plays, but the offense, again, didn't move the ball very well. And if not for a defensive pick six, they probably don't win that football game. So I think that this week, you saw what Michael Hawkins did last week against Texas, which was not a lot. I think this week is going to kind of determine on what Oklahoma wants to do the rest of the year at the quarterback position, because there's a lot of people here in Oklahoma that think that maybe they should go back to Jackson Arnold. Now, the problem with Jackson is he's turned the ball over a little bit. He hasn't been super accurate at times, but he has pushed the ball down the field. They've had a couple explosive plays with him in there. Obviously, he's a little bit more veteran than Michael Hawkins. The issue, guys, like you guys know, you keep flip-flopping the quarterback position, and you're going to end up losing maybe both of these guys to the transfer portal. And when you talk about potential staff changes at the end of the year, maybe on the offensive side of the football, would these guys enter no matter what? So it's a very delicate situation. It's going to be Michael Hawkins on Saturday to start the game for Oklahoma. Brent Venables said this week that he wants there to be a bigger body of work for Michael moving forward to see if he can be the guy. But I think he's going to have a really short leash. If this offense is stagnant again in the first half like it was last week against Texas, I would not be surprised at all if they pull Michael Hawkins and put Jackson Arnold back into the game. I know he's been practicing really well. Obviously, his future at Oklahoma is kind of up for debate, but I do think that he wants to be at OU. He wants another shot at this thing. He has already played in 4 games, so the redshirt question is kind of up in the air as well. But it's certainly something to keep an eye on, because I think if Oklahoma goes out there and they're not moving the ball, at some point I think you have to give Jackson another look.
Hey, George, it's Wes. Appreciate you doing this, man. You were reading my mind. I was about to ask. It felt like the way Venables answered that question that we absolutely could see Arnold this week. That was just me outside looking in. So good to hear. You kind of had the same thought there. What can you tell us? Let's go to the injuries, man. I saw the graphic pop up during the Texas game. Like, hey, Oklahoma's missing, 5 receivers. Obviously, Deion Burks is one of the big names there, transferred in. What can you tell us about the latest on the guys you expect to be out this week, or the guys that could be out this week that truly are kind of impact guys for this team?
Yeah, they've been decimated at the receiver spot. Coming into the year, that was considered maybe their deepest position group on the team. And then all of a sudden you lose, a Jaden Gibson during fall camp, who was expected to be a breakout player this year. He blows his knee out. Jalil Farouk, the 4-year senior who's, has been really productive for them over his career, breaks his foot on the first possession of the game. Nick Anderson has a quad strain that's kind of held him out all season. Came back in the Tennessee game, played 1 series and re-injured it. So no one knows if he'll still be out. Andrel Anthony tore his ACL last year against Texas and has had 3 different procedures since then to try and fix the knee, some different scopes and cleaning it out. No one knows when he'll be back. And then, of course, Deion Burks, like you mentioned, the Purdue transfer, who was expected to be their top receiver this year, was playing pretty well in the first few games. Then he gets hurt against Tennessee with a soft tissue injury and has been questionable now for the last 3 weeks. Didn't play against Auburn, didn't play against Texas. And this week, I think that it's one of those situations where he might try to give it a go. He was listed as questionable on the availability report. Brent Venables said earlier this week that he's really trying to play this week, that he's up to 80% max volume was the quote. I don't exactly know what max volume means, if that means speed or just overall health. I don't really know. He also said that he's trying to defy all odds to play on Saturday. So that makes me think that he's not going to be able to play. So we'll see. That would be a huge boost for them, because right now they're playing, 3 true freshmen at wide receiver who just haven't, those are guys that I think are highly talented, but nobody expected them to play this year. Brennan Thompson, a transfer from Texas, but a really small guy, speedster. He's going to play a lot at receiver. J.J. Hester, a 6-year senior that really hasn't done much in his career, is playing a lot. And then they even moved a cornerback, Jacoby Johnson, who played wide receiver in high school, and was really productive at wide receiver in high school. He's moved over to the wide receiver room but hasn't made any impact. So that's another part of the issue with this Oklahoma offense. Everybody wants to blame the quarterback and the play caller, but I do think that sometimes it's as simple as they just don't have a ton of their playmakers available right now on offense.
Again, talking to George Stoya from Sooner Scoop here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Let's take a look at the defense now, which, like South Carolina, is the strength of this team. We know they have talent. Wes and I were talking about it earlier. You got guys like Stutzman, R. Mason Thomas, Eli Bowen on the back end is turning some heads at cornerback. But schematically speaking, what are they going to throw at South Carolina this weekend that's going to give this Gamecock offense trouble?
Yeah, it's going to be a mix of things, and you guys know this, having seen South Carolina go up against Brent Venables and the Clemson defense for years. He's going to throw the kitchen sink at South Carolina. We've seen them come out in 4-man front, 3-man front, a bear front where they walk up the linebackers, and it looks like they've got 7 guys maybe coming after the quarterback, and then they drop guys that maybe you're not expecting to drop. They're going to have different stunts and blitzes and things that I'm sure that they're going to want to get after Sellers and also contain him, because his ability to run, that's something that Brent Venables' defenses have had struggles with in previous years. And so I think that, having to spy him, whether that's with a Danny Stutzman or, their cheetah position, which has kind of been a rotating door this year, it's going to be really interesting to see how they attack the South Carolina offense, because, one area that Oklahoma has maybe been a little bit vulnerable is on the back end. They've given up some big plays, to Tennessee and Auburn in the passing game. Texas last week was able to run the football a little bit better, but also had some big chunk plays in the passing game. And so that back end, the corner position, they're playing true freshman Eli Bowen, who's been really, really good in the moments he's been in there, but he is a true freshman. He could make some mistakes. And so I'm interested to see if South Carolina tries to push the ball down the field, because teams have had success throwing the football in Oklahoma at times. And so this defensive line, the front seven for Oklahoma, is really the strength of the defense. They've been able to get after quarterbacks pretty well this year. They only had one sack last week against Texas. I think it came on the first play of the game, but they created a lot of havoc in that game. Texas was able to capitalize down the field, and Quinn Ewers played a pretty good football game. So I think you're going to see a lot of different blitzes trying to get after Sellers, force him into some bad mistakes. I know that South Carolina's turned the ball over a few times this year. I think they lead the country in turnovers. You guys can correct me on that. But I think that's where Oklahoma defensively, they know to win this football game, just like South Carolina defensively, they have to create some turnovers, help their offense, give them some short fields, and maybe even score a defensive touchdown if they want to win this football game.
Yeah, George, I mean, these two teams are like the two Spider-Man, like the meme, looking at each other in terms of strengths and weaknesses, I feel like. And, you look at the over-under on this thing, man, it's right at like 40.5, 41.5, depending on where you look. That feels about right. You can certainly see why Vegas would set that number at that. I guess, what do you think is going to be, other than just maybe, hey, somebody has a pick six or a big sort of just strange play, what's the differentiator this week? And, are you thinking this thing has got to be low scoring as well in terms of just game flow?
Oh, definitely. I would take the under on this game for sure. I just don't see how Oklahoma is going to generate a ton of points. Maybe I'm wrong, and Michael Hawkins goes out there and lights it up, or maybe they switch over and Jackson Arnold comes back and looks like the 5-star that everybody expected him to be. But with Oklahoma's issues offensively, whether it's the offensive line, which has just been, a disaster really for Oklahoma in terms of a rotating door, having to play a lot of young guys, some injuries up there, going against that South Carolina front. I just don't see how Oklahoma is going to have a ton of success moving the ball up and down the field. And then on the other side, I think that Oklahoma can have a lot of success defensively. So I think this is going to come down to who can create more turnovers, who can create more chaotic plays. I know South Carolina has played in a lot of chaotic games this year, so you lean towards that. And I think it comes down to special teams, guys. I know that's a specialty, obviously, with Beamer and Beamer ball and all that goes into that. Oklahoma has to play a really clean game on special teams, maybe have a big punt return or a kick return. Field goal kicking has been kind of shaky for Oklahoma this year. They started the year with Tyler Keltner as the field goal kicker. He's been okay, and then Zach Schmidt came in and kicked really well against Auburn. So I'm interested to see who's going to be kicking for Oklahoma in this game. But that, to me, turnovers and special teams, when you talk about a defensive game, that's where I see this game being won. If one of these sides can get a couple turnovers and maybe score on one of those turnovers, I think that will be the difference in this one.
Last one for you here. I got right at about 2 minutes. You mentioned Coach Beamer there. Of course, he was on Lincoln Riley's staff before getting hired as the head coach here at South Carolina. And everything that I've seen from the Oklahoma fan base, they seem to like Coach Beamer a lot. Can you speak to why Coach Beamer has such a positive reputation around Norman?
Well, I think one is he's just such a great guy. I'm sure you guys have gotten to get to know him, but even now, anytime I bump into Shane, whether it's at media days or down in Destin for, SEC meetings and things like that, he always stops and talks and asks, how I'm doing in my personal life and things like that. And I think that's number one with Shane. He's just a good dude. But number two, his position was very good at Oklahoma. He coached tight ends and fullbacks, and they had a lot of success under him. He also helped out a lot with special teams. They were some of the best special teams units Oklahoma's had in quite some time and really elevated that group when he was in Norman. So I think it's those two things. And, again, just his personability, I think that is something that really stood out. There was a lot of people in Norman that thought, if Lincoln were to leave at some point for the NFL down the line, if Shane was still on staff, that maybe they would promote a Shane Beamer. I know I personally thought that he had the chops to be a head coach someday. So there's a lot of people in Norman. I know Joe Castiglione, the athletic director, loves Shane Beamer. They were very active in the community here. So I think all of those things it'll be definitely a welcoming back for Shane.
He is George Stoya from Sooner Scoop. We appreciate your insight and looking forward to the game on Saturday.
All right, again, that's George Stoya. Appreciate him for joining us earlier today on the show and giving us some insight on Oklahoma football. Let's bring in now, of course, from Gamecock Central, it's my guy, Jack Veltri. Jack, appreciate you taking the time in and hopping on. I'm curious. So I thought George gave us some good stuff there. I know you and some of the other guys at Sooner Scoop have been back and forth with some written content this week as well, as we have kind of learned more and more about this team throughout the week. What stands out to you, Jack, about Oklahoma, other than just that they have kind of had some of the similar strengths and weaknesses as South Carolina has this year so far?
Yeah, and I think and thank you for having me on first off, Wes. But I mean, I think you kind of took the words right out of my mouth there. Like, South Carolina and Oklahoma are similar in a lot of ways, obviously, but they're also different in a lot of ways. Like, South Carolina, I think, has a better offense than Oklahoma, in my opinion. I think they have less issues. I mean, look, if South Carolina doesn't turn the ball over at the rate they do and have the penalties that they do, we're talking about a 5-1 team right now. So Oklahoma's got some issues right now. They're coming off that 31-point loss to Texas, but they're trying to figure out their offense right now. I mean, look, like the interview said, I mean, there is a possibility that Brett Venables maybe decides to go with Jackson Arnold at some point in this game. That wouldn't shock me. But at the same time, Michael Hawkins is their guy right now. And look, from what I've heard talking to the guys over at Sooner Scoop and stuff, the best thing they can kind of say is that he's trying. Like, he's showing plenty of heart, but it's not leading to the results that Oklahoma wants, right? And that's kind of just far from what we're used to seeing out of OU. Like, we've seen them be like a dominant offense with a kind of mediocre defense over the years. And look, I know times have changed. I know the coaching staff is different and stuff. But when you think of Oklahoma football, you think of offense. You think of Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, all these Heisman Trophy winner quarterbacks, and all these weapons that they have, like Adrian Peterson, Dede Westbrook, guys like that are just really, really good on offense. And it hasn't really been the case this year. Now, granted, they're banged up. They're missing, 5 receivers right now, including their leading guy who's questionable for this weekend. So I'm wondering if he'll play. Deion Burks, we'll see if he's out there. But Oklahoma's got a lot of problems offensively right now. It's not just the fact that they're injured. They put up 3 points against Texas. Like, I know Texas is good, but Oklahoma's got some issues, and they have to rely on their defense in a lot of these cases to keep them in ball games. And when you see that they get up 31 or 34 points against Texas last week, and again, I know it's Texas, but when they're giving up that many points, they're not going to be able to win games. Their offense is not going to be able to score that many points unless just some sprinkle of fairy dust comes on them and they just all of a sudden turn into that insane offense we're so used to seeing from them.
Yeah, and Jack, most of the guys you were just mentioning there were quarterbacks. So we're not used to seeing Oklahoma in just recent history struggle at that position. And I think the difference in the two teams right now is, regardless of what a small, loud percentage of South Carolina fans say about the situation here at South Carolina, I think the Gamecocks just have a much better QB situation right now than Oklahoma does. I may play the clip from Dow Loggins, or I may not. We may just talk about it depending on how long we go. But, Jack, I think if you're a Gamecock fan, regardless of what you think about play calling, offensive strategy, really regardless of what you think about Dow Loggins, I would encourage you to go watch and listen to his press conference from this week, because I thought there was some really good insight there about some of the coaching points with Lenora Sellers from Dow Loggins in terms of the approach on, Loggins put it on himself a little bit in saying, look, I've been preaching, do not take sacks. Do not take sacks. And one of the throwaways is basically Lenoris knowing I'm about to get hit, I'm going to get sacked, I'm trying not to take a sack. So I think with a young quarterback, we all just expect them to instantly be great and be who they are, but that's just not the reality of the situation. And so Dow talked about basically when you sort of just look at the difference in Dow Loggins saying, we have a quarterback, like we have our guy. And then you go and look at what Venables is having to say, which is they've already gone to a new quarterback in the freshman Hawkins. And then I got the impression that Arnold is going to play this week unless Hawkins just comes out and looks great. George Stoya, who's there on the ground covering that team every day, he basically said it like this. He's under the impression it will be a short leash with Michael Hawkins. So, that's just not the situation you want to be in. With South Carolina, it's more like, hey, Lenoris has been the guy. There's been some injuries that have kept him out clearly. They've done some situational stuff, but Lenoris is clearly the number one quarterback. You look at Oklahoma, I think, frankly, they have bigger issues at quarterback. I think they have bigger issues on the offensive line. Their top running back, Jack, is averaging like 2.8 yards to carry against SEC competition. And it has caused that defense to just get worn down, I feel like. Anybody who watched the Texas-Oklahoma game, Oklahoma was in the game early. Their defense got an early turnover. They're in Texas territory. They missed the field goal. They had to settle for another field goal. And then it was just basically like just a blitz basically from Texas at the end of the first half going into halftime. It just kind of snowballed on them is what I'm trying to say. And before they knew it, before they could blink, it was like, I think it went from 3-0 to 21-3 Texas. And so, I think that's the key for South Carolina this week. Both defenses, or we would assume on paper, both defenses are going to play well. Both defenses are probably going to keep the opponent down a little bit. I think for Carolina, it's just going to be about don't make those big mistakes. Be okay punting sometimes. Like, you're probably going to, against a really good defense, it's going to even be okay that you punt. I just think over time, the Carolina offense should be able to do enough in a game like this, as long as they don't make mistakes, to where I know Carolina's not favored, but I kind of expect them to win the game, Jack, if they can minimize the turnovers and the big mistakes, because I don't think this is a game offensively where you're saying, hey, we have to score on every drive. We have to put the ball in danger. We have to be super aggressive. I think run your offense over time. I think Carolina can win this game.
Absolutely. It's not surprising to see that South Carolina is the underdog again in this type of game. You're going to give the home team in Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt, even though the fact that they have, like you said, Wes, I think they do have more problems in South Carolina. It wouldn't surprise me if Michael Hawkins comes out of that game rather quickly. He played pretty well against Tennessee, but over the last few weeks, Auburn and Texas, it hasn't been pretty. He took 6 sacks last week against the Longhorns. He only threw for 148 yards, and even before that against Auburn. And Auburn is not good this year. It hasn't been what you've expected, I think. And look, they put all their eggs in the basket of letting Dylan Gabriel walk to go to Oregon. And obviously Gabriel probably wants to be closer to home in Hawaii, but obviously Oregon's on the West Coast, so I get it. But at the same time, it's like they put their eggs in the basket of Jackson Arnold being their guy. And then after the 3 games into the year, it's like, hey, we're turning the keys over to a freshman. We're turning it over to Michael Hawkins. So I don't know what to expect from OU with their quarterback situation. It's a mess. And I think they have way more problems in South Carolina, like I said. And look, I know there's going to be a lot of complaining about Lenoris Sellers and the way he played in that game. And people out there saying that he stinks and he's not the answer and the experiment's over and stuff. And I know you and Chris and a lot of others have kind of denounced any of that stuff. And I totally agree. It's completely outlandish. South Carolina is going to be fine. I think, look, 3-3, it's not where you really want, but it's not the farthest thing from what anyone expected. I think we kind of figured Alabama was going to be that tough game. You're probably not going to win. Same deal with Ole Miss. Ole Miss, you just didn't come out to play. Alabama, you did. You just made some mistakes that proved costly. So to your point about the mistakes, they have to be able to limit them. That is ultimately what is keeping them back, I think, right now. It's not the fact that they're missing opportunities on offense or anything. They're able to move the ball down the field. That's not the issue. The issue to me is, you get an interception off of Jalen Milroe, and you have a 5-point lead in the fourth quarter, and then what do? First play right after, you fumble it and give it right back to Alabama. And what does Alabama do? They go down and score. So I think what I'm trying to get at here is I don't think LSU and Alabama necessarily beat South Carolina in full, But I think it's more so like South Carolina is beating themselves. Like the 13 penalties were egregious, like ridiculous, right, wrong, whatever. You still had 13 penalties, and you also had a 17-0 in that game, 17-0 lead in that game, and you blew it away. So that was the issue there. The Alabama game, you had the lead going into the fourth quarter, but just like any other time, you had 4 turnovers, and that is not going to cut it in the SEC. So I think it's pretty simple to me. They got to be able to limit the mistakes. Like if you come away with this game and you're having maybe like 1 to 2 turnovers, but they don't prove to be costly, you should be able to win this game. Like I think in a lot of people's minds, not just South Carolina, I think the Gamecocks are the better team. Like they have the better defense, I think, even though it's really close. And I think they have the better offense, and they have less problems on offense. Like Sellers is going to figure it out, I think, and we'll have to see. Like I'm not sure what to expect. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think this is going to be a game. I've said it before this week. You might have to score 21 points to win this game. Like first to 21 points, and the team that makes the one mistake on defense for a touchdown, that's going to be the difference in this game. And I think South Carolina is going to come out ready to play. They're going to come out of here, I think, with a big win and kind of going into the bye week like, hey, we still have everything right in front of us. There's still the real possibility they can definitely exceed 6 wins. It's just, are you going to be able to continue to play the way you have? And we're also like banking all this on the fact of, is South Carolina's defense going to continue to do what they have done? Because so far this year, I mean, for the most part, I mean, LSU, they gave up 39 points, but it's not all on them necessarily. They played outstanding this year, but are they going to be able to continue to do that? And we'll have to see. But I really do think South Carolina is going to be coming out here ready to play, and they're going to be making up for the mistakes they've made in the past, in my opinion.
Well, I think, Jack, for them on defense, I don't see any signs of them kind of slowing down on that side. Like I don't think it's been a fluke. I think when you have what you have off the edge, and then you combine that with what a TJ Sanders, a Boogie Huntley, and a Taki Hemingway are doing for you in the middle, and then I would say DeAndre Jules before he got hurt as well has come in and been a big contributor in there. I think those guys and their play has been overshadowed a little bit by the job that like a Kennard and of course Dylan Stewart the first few weeks just becoming a viral online sensation or whatever. But I think they've been playing well at all 3 levels of the defense, and so to me right now it's just about continue to stay healthy on defense. Don't have the big injury. Especially to like your superstars or to your positions that aren't quite as deep as some others. I think the secondary, you look at the snap counts there, especially at kind of safety and nickel, you have the same 3 guys pretty much playing every meaningful snap of the game. So for those guys, you obviously have to, knock on wood for them, not trying to speak it into existence, but you just need to stay healthy at those spots. Even at linebacker now, losing Bengali Kamara, I think you've proved like you can keep playing and playing well there without him, but you have chipped away at that depth a little bit. So to me, again, the beauty of football, like you said, you never really know what you're going to get from week to week. Could the defense just have an off day? Of course, they're human. That's possible. You do at least I would not foresee that being this week. I would be kind of shocked if Oklahoma has the firepower, especially with their offensive line issues. Like I think they have shown it's very difficult to just rebuild an entire O-line in the transfer portal. Like you almost just can't do it. Combine that with Carolina's D-line that has gotten pressure really against everybody they've played, including at times against LSU, who, arguably is the best O-line that they'll face all year long. So I think you got to like their chances there. I think the interesting little battle here will be the Venables defense, the Venables defensive scheme. Anybody who's a Gamecock fan probably remembers watching his Clemson defenses. And Jack, I know, Jack, you're younger than me. You were probably playing football in high school watching Clemson defenses just aggressive, hit the quarterback, get after you, disguise their coverages, disguise their pressures. I think, Jack, go back to something Dow Loggins said this week, and Loggins was talking more in general, but he was talking about for Lenoris, know when the journey is over. And in that case, he's talking about the journey of one play. Know when the play is over. Hey, is this a throwaway? Is this I'm just going to take my sack, which nobody wants to take a sack, but it's better than turning the ball over. And, the interesting thing, you can make this conversation about Lenoris. You can make this about quarterback play in general. I mean, Jack, I'm sitting there watching your Bills on Monday Night Football, and Peyton and Eli are having the same exact conversation about Josh Allen, who is like, for my money, top 2 quarterback in the league, maybe the best quarterback in the league, depending on the day. And you're having the conversation about him. In NFL, he's a veteran at this point, and you're having the conversation about him. So there's always going to be that conversation about when do you try to make something happen, when do you throw the ball away, and when do you just eat a sack. And so I think in this game, let's bring it forward to Oklahoma, there are going to be times that Venables just gets you. Like, there's going to be times that whatever you have called, he's going to have the right call against it. And either from a coverage standpoint on the back end, you're going to look to throw into a window. You're going to think, hey, I've got cover 2, and it's going to be cover 3. Or, hey, it's zone, and it's going to be man. And so I think it's going to be imperative for Sellers. If you see that and you're like thinking, like, don't read the play out completely pre-snap. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, trust yourself, but if something is off, you've got to know when to just be like, hey, I'm going to eat this ball. Like, in a game where you're not going to have to score 35 points, don't put the ball in danger in those situations. There's going to be times when they probably overwhelm South Carolina's offensive line. If you have to take a sack, just take a sack, because I do think, like, give Venables credit. Somebody asked, is this still a Big 12 defense because they don't play defense in the Big 12? It's absolutely not a Big 12 defense. Like, this is an SEC defense. This is a Brent Venables defense. They're talented, but also they the thing about Venables too, though, Jack, over the years, his defenses were prone to the big play from time to time. And that's because they are so aggressive. Like, they are going to come after you, and they know over the period of a game, they're going to win more of those battles than they're going to lose them. But if you can gash them at the right time for a long run or a bust in the secondary and just score a couple of times, as we have seen South Carolina do this year on offense, then that may hold up. Like you said, if you score 21 points in this game, like, you feel decent about winning the game, I think. So I think for Carolina, it's going to be choose your battles wisely in terms of, all right, am I going to make this somewhat dangerous throw, or am I just going to live to fight the next down and know that eventually I'm going to hit 1 or 2 and it should be enough?
Well, first off, I appreciate the high praise for my quarterback, Josh Allen. But anyway, on a more serious note, there's a lot to unpack there. And I'll start with the defensive side of things for Oklahoma. And you're right. I remember, Clemson's defense back in the day. Sure, I was in high school and stuff, but, them boys were good. Clemson was legit. And, they're still pretty good defensively. But Brent Venables obviously was a big part of that. And to your point about them being aggressive, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. If you're going to be aggressive, you're going to be you got to give a little to get. So if you're going to be aggressive, means you're going to be in sacks, you're going to be in the backfield a lot, but you also need to, look, that's the defensive line. We're talking about being aggressive. You blitz, and you're leaving your secondary out there on an island, and there's the occasional chance of giving up a big play, like you said. Lenore Sellers, for instance, let's say he throws deep to Nick Harbor, and, there's pressure coming in his face, and it's a one-on-one matchup out there. I have a good feeling that Harbor should be able to win that type of matchup based on what we saw this weekend at Alabama. So that's the price you pay to be aggressive, but it's worked for them. And I think you're okay with giving up a play or two from time to time, so long as it's not like a consistent thing. If this happens every single game and you're continuing to lose because of it, obviously you have to adjust. But because it hasn't been that case from my standpoint so far, I think they're okay. Now, at the same time, talking about Sellers and this offense stuff, you mentioned Dow Loggins earlier, and what I got out of listening to him yesterday speak was that obviously Dow's going to take a lot of the blame for the mistakes that are going on. Is it all on him? Probably not. It's also on the players going out there and executing and doing their job. So it's a 50-50 split, in my opinion. However, Sellers takes what these guys teach him, obviously, right? Any there's the mentor. The mentee always takes what the mentor teaches them, and I think in this case, Sellers is being taught like, hey, like throw the ball away. Like that's kind of what Dowell seems to be teaching him. And I think Sellers might be taking that as like just throw it away at any cost. And I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Like when he was getting sacked in the second quarter and that ball just gets tossed up in the air as he helicopters on his way down, that was not the right decision. Take the sack, take your losses and move on. That's all you got to do. And it really is that simple. Like if you have a window to throw the ball away right before you get hit, do it. Like if there's no one open, throw the ball away. I think that's what we saw a lot in that Ole Miss game is, credit to Ole Miss. They were playing fine defense, but South Carolina's receivers weren't getting open. And you'd see Sellers take a sack when maybe he should have thrown the ball away. It's stuff like that. So it just comes down to playing, I think, smarter on the field. Like know when it's time to take your lumps and move on. But at the same time, like if a play's there, try to make it. Like do what you got to do. If you live with the risk of going for it rather than not, like give it your all. But at the same time, you gotta know when to. I guess I don't even know if it's give up, but just you gotta know when the play is dead. And I think that's the biggest thing for Sellers. And then just with this offense, I do think, like I said, 21 points. As long as you get into the 20s, I think you're in a good spot. I don't expect this defense to blow up in its face and make all these mistakes that they haven't been making all year. I'm talking about South Carolina. They've been great this year. I don't really think there's any bit of slowdown happening. And I think they're going to be trying to get to Jackson Arnold or Hawkins, whoever's at quarterback for them. They're going to be trying to get in that backfield and do what they did against Alabama that worked so well, which is force pressure on Jalen Milroe, make him throw it a little bit, and see what happens. They came away with 2 interceptions and 4 sacks, so you feel pretty good about that. Have that type of performance again, and I think you're feeling really good about your defense's chances to keep you in that ballgame and potentially win it. It also wouldn't hurt to get a defensive score. I mean, when's the last time South Carolina's had that this season? I think that would be a really nice little cherry on top to create some separation that maybe your offense, if they're struggling a little bit, has that, that safety blanket in their back pocket of, hey, our defense went out there and scored a touchdown. So I think we should be good from there. But, yeah, the defense, like I said, for South Carolina, I expect them to be continuing what they've been doing all year. They haven't shown me anything of signs of regression or anything.
Well, and shoot, man, just thinking about it, think about all the – if you want to combine defense and special teams, you had let's see, Kilgore was probably 1 or 2 guys away from being able to break off the one at the end of the half for a pick six. Mm-hmm. Now, he smartly realized, there were a couple of Alabama guys that became defenders, and he steps out of bounds, to give you a shot at the field goal. But you have, let's see, ODU game, you had a fake field goal that got wiped out. That was a touchdown that got wiped out for a penalty. And you had the 2 pick sixes against LSU that got wiped out by a penalty. So, I mean, they've been right there. Like they've had they've done the hardest part on those. They've just had them wiped out. Unfortunately, on, let's see, 2 of the 3, it's getting wiped out by something that doesn't even affect the play. The fake field goal for a touchdown, it was illegal man downfield that was nowhere near the ball. And then, of course, we've all talked about the Kennard. At least the first one, the play was sort of generated by him reaching out and horse collaring, if you agree with the call, which I do after seeing the rule. But the other one, he didn't have to block the quarterback. So, anyway, I agree with you, though, man. Defense, special teams, can you we can talk about South Carolina's mistakes and turnovers, but Oklahoma put the ball on the turf against Texas last week and really sparked that run for them as well. And I think, and the reason I think we're going to see Jackson Arnold this week, other than just the comments from Venables, is I watch Hawkins play, and he's really, at least from what I've seen, not been able to consistently power the football down the field. It's been either QB run game or it's been just lots of short passes, man. So, I think with Jackson Arnold, he's maybe not the most consistently accurate quarterback, but has been able to at least at times put the football down the field, which I think if you're going to have any chance to beat South Carolina on Saturday, you are going to have to do that. So we'll see what their approach is as this thing moves forward. But Jack, let's start to wind this thing down, man, and close the show out. So Chris and I normally give like one big key and a final score. So I got to send you my predictions, by the way, but I'll give mine here in a second. What, Jack, is your biggest key, and what is your final score to this game?
Yeah, and I also agree with your take there on Hawkins, man. I think it's very true that he's more of the mobile type guy that is throwing short passes and stuff. And Arnold, I mean, look, if Oklahoma's going to win this game, they have to take shots downfield. You cannot win against South Carolina with short passes and stuff. Just go back to what South Carolina did against Ole Miss when they tried doing that. You only scored 3 points because you didn't take shots downfield. Look what happened against Alabama when you actually decided to move the football a little bit downfield. So my point is, like, just that's what Oklahoma has to do to win this game if they even want a chance. Now, what do I think a key to the game is for South Carolina? There's a lot of different things you could pick from here. I think they have to, obviously, besides limit the mistakes and stuff, I think you need to see this offense continue to do what they did last week. And I think it starts with Sellers obviously continuing to hit his windows and run when he needs to. Like, I thought he was very precise when he decided to run. I think that was the big thing, is like he broke out of a sack. If he didn't have a shot to take it downfield like he did to Gage Larverdane on that ball that should have been caught, he was off and running, and he made nice plays with his feet. At the same time, it's a yin and yang sort of thing. There's no Lenore Sellers doing well without Rocket Sanders doing well. So Rocket needs to continue to run the ball effectively, and I think that is the difference maker in this game. If you want to win, you got to be able to run the football like you have been and show that, like, hey, Oklahoma's defense is not all that. Like, yeah, they're good, but, I mean, South Carolina can go out here and exploit some of these things with the way Sellers is able to be dynamic, and couple that with the fact that, hey, if Rocket's on his A game, who's stopping him, right? Who's going to bring a guy like that down? So that's kind of the key for me outside of the defense needing to play well, limiting the mistakes. I haven't done my staff picks yet either, so I'll do that sometime tonight or tomorrow. But I'm going to go with an early score prediction of South Carolina winning this game. I'm going to go with 23-20. I think that is – I have South Carolina winning, obviously. I think that is just – this is a get-right game for them more so than Oklahoma. Like, you need to go into the month of November and into the bye week with feeling good about yourself, because, look, this time last year, you went winless in October. That was the most miserable month of covering South Carolina football, just because it was the loss to Florida. I think you lost to Missouri in there. That was an ugly game. And obviously A&M was an awful game too. So there's a lot of work to be done for South Carolina, but I think this week, get a win, go into the bye week, correct what you need to, and actually come prepared 2 weeks with preparation for A&M. And you have this, everything is out in front of you. You just have to go out there and take it. I think that is what this team needs to do. Finish the game.
You know, I think, Jack, if they can go play well and win the game, it would kind of solidify to me, and probably to a lot of fans, of, okay, this is who this team is. Like, I think there was a sense of, okay, we all lived it after ODU. Everyone's going, that's not what I expected. Then they bounce back. They play well against Kentucky, play obviously pretty well against LSU, but had all the mistakes, and you're going, okay, maybe ODU was sort of the outlier in this. And then I think coming off the Ole Miss game, people started to look back to that ODU game and combine it with what they saw against Ole Miss, and they're going, who is this South Carolina football team? So then they bounce back, play well. Obviously didn't make that one play to go win the game against Bama, but you're going, they competed on the field with a historic program and did not look outmatched or overmatched at all. So I think, to me, you go into the bye week, if you can win this game, Jack, you go into the bye week with your fan base going, okay, this is who they are. Like, they've had a couple of off games. Most teams this year have. There's been a lot of parity in college football throughout. There's only so many teams that can actually go compete and play well from week to week. So I think you feel good. I also think we all said probably before the season starts, looking at this 3-game stretch, if you go back to the stretch before it, you said, can you split Kentucky and LSU, which they did, and then you say, can they win 1 out of 3 during just this murderer's row that involved Ole Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma? Well, obviously you've used up your first 2. You didn't win the first 2. So in order to meet that goal, in order to match that thought, you've got to win this week. And then you go into the bye week feeling surprisingly well, given everything that has happened to this point. So we'll see what happens. We'll have complete coverage, of course, on GamecockCentral.com. Jack, I've got South Carolina winning as well. I've got them scoring one more point than you. I've got 24-14. I just do not like Oklahoma's chances of scoring much on this South Carolina defense. Maybe one of those little busts or two, maybe one long drive from Oklahoma. I think most teams, even if they struggle, have that in them. But for the most part, I think South Carolina needs to just stay the course in this game. And I'll put my key on the other side. I think the key is, once again, for this defense to do what they've done almost all season long, and that's just go out and set the tone. And if they do that, I think the pressure mounts on Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma does not want to be in a game where they're behind and having to play from behind, whereas I think Carolina will be fine if they just stay the course. And I don't think there's quite as much in-stadium pressure, if that makes sense, on them. Like, it's a home game for Oklahoma, but if they start slow, it's going to start to that little murmur, that little sort of where the crowd is quiet, but they, fans boo a lot more these days because they're paying NIL bucks, I think. So, Jack, I got a feeling if Carolina can set the tone early on, they can go win the game. So, hey, are you going out there, Jack?
Yeah, I'm going out there. I'm leaving. Me and CJ are flying out tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, all right. So, Jack will have the live coverage for you there on GamecockCentral.com. Make sure you check that out. CJ will have photos. The rest of us will be back here bringing content leading up to it. And, of course, tons of content coming out Sunday, Monday, all the days after going into the bye week. So, Jack, have a safe trip, man. I appreciate you hopping on, okay?
Yeah, appreciate you having me, man. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you again soon.
All right, he is Jack Veltri. Heading on out to Oklahoma here soon. And I, of course, am Wes Mitchell here live at BP Skinner. Like I told you in the top, come on out. Check out everything they have going on here in the Vista at BP Skinner. If you want to get a better idea of some of your options here, going over to bpskinnerclothiers.com, where you can check out what Brent has going on. Tons of former Gamecocks still shopping here, all the way leading back from their time here on campus. And, of course, like I told you, whether it's some South Carolina gear, whether it's for a wedding, whether it's for a big event, whether it's for work, just excellent job here from Brent on all levels of that. So come on out, BP Skinner, check them out. Again, for Jack, for George Stoya over at Center Scoop, I am Wes Mitchell. Check out all the coverage we got on GamecockCentral.com. And Chris Clark and I will be back on Monday morning. It'll be 9 a.m. kickoff for us Monday morning to give you all our thoughts on South Carolina versus Oklahoma post the game on Saturday. So, all right, y'all, appreciate it as always. Appreciate everybody hopping on. I'm out. We'll see you then.